I'm Sylvia, and today I'm going to share with you why I garden and how I got started. So, my earliest memory of gardening was really as a child, and my dad would actually have this piece of garden, you can say, around our house, and then he would just put seeds in, and then I'll just watch it grow, and then of course we'll eat the vegetables that is a result of the seedlings that he had actually put, or the seeds that he had actually sown into this soil or this ground. Essentially, for me as a kid, it's like, oh, nice, something's growing out. And of course, all of this just kind of grew up with me. It was just natural. It wasn't anything different or out of the blue for me. So when I got my own home, the first thing that I did was actually dug into the ground. I actually dug into the ground, and I actually had these bricks that I had laid and used cement, because I didn't know much better, to adhere it together to make myself this raised garden bed. And of course I put soil in. I didn't know much about soil. I just got what was cheap, what I felt was good at that time. And of course that's how I got my initial raised bed garden started. And of course I would put seeds like my dad would, grow whatever I wanted to grow in there. And at that time, that was probably 13 years ago, 14 years ago, all I really wanted to do was just grow, do whatever, kind of like what my dad did. And some varieties of seeds that I chose were really because it looked good. And guess what? I grew different types of tomatoes. I grew different types of zucchinis, but then I don't like to eat tomatoes. I have never had zucchini with my parents at all, or even on my own. So it's like, well, why did I grow these things? The answer was because of how it looked on the packaging, and the fact that on the packaging and the description is said that it was easy to grow. So I grew it. And of course, it was successful for me. And I also put in a large amount of fertilizer in time, where it just kind of kept on growing and growing and growing. So I had these huge zucchinis and lots of tomatoes that I didn't know what to do with. So I essentially just gave it to my friends, or made vegetarian lasagna, where I actually used the zucchini, and I sliced it thinly and put it into the layers, where everyone was like, wow, this is delicious. And I was like, great. And of course, then I started a family, COVID hit, and I started to shift my thinking a little bit, where, well, I probably shouldn't be growing for fun. Well, I still can. But at the same time, I'm spending so much time in my garden. It needs to have a good output at the end of the day, where I am not just wasting my time and energy anymore as when I was younger and had all that time. So then I really started to explore different seed varieties, and how it actually works for our climate here in Calgary, which is also known as Zone 4A. We don't really have a long growing season. It's really more like 2.5 months, and then with the colder before frost and after frost times, which really just bumps it to 3.5, 4 months tops, given that it was a good year. So we don't really have a lot of time to grow a lot of things. So for me, it was like, okay, well, checking out the varieties, does it fit for our climate? This is when I also started to watch a lot of other YouTube channels, where, of course, I watched this guy named Ben from Grow Veg. He's in Britain. And then, of course, I also watched Epic Gardening, and they're in San Diego, which is really good weather compared to us. And for me, I was just like, well, it's nice that you have all this good weather and you can grow year round, but I can't. And then of course they're also talking about different varieties of these vegetable seeds that they're sowing. And of course there's me going onto the Canada websites, like say West Coast Seeds and Mackenzie Seeds, the two popular ones in my opinion, that I can't really find these varieties that everyone's talking about that I'm seeing online. Of course, it's also due to because our weather doesn't allow for it. Where I'm at, we're in Canada, it's different from these other places, countries that these other individuals are living. So this is what really got me started into looking at different varieties of things that I can grow here. And of course now I'm more growing for the idea of sustainability, because of course after COVID, everything just kind of, I don't know, a lot of reality checks in ways where, well, if we can't be sustainable, then what? Now we don't have much for options, especially with what's going on in the world right now. We can't always get a lot of things imported at a good price, or just having an import in general could be hard right now. So it's just for my family and I right now, it's really sustainability. And last year I actually grew so much potato that we had a lot of potato to eat. And funny, potato, it's readily available at the stores, but I must say it does taste really different when it's homegrown and store-bought. If I was to actually cook two potatoes together, one store-bought, one homegrown, we can actually taste the difference. What's really the difference? Well, I can't really explain to you in terms of taste, but there's actually a difference. Like, you can actually taste a difference. And yeah, that's really what got me really started. And then even say, for example, pulling carrots out of the ground. I remember the first time that my son had pulled a carrot out of the ground, he was like in awe. He was like, whoa! He had no clue he could pull something out of the ground, and it was something he recognized. So that was, of course, when he was younger and the first time he did it. But at the same time, last year, when he was much older, he still pulled a carrot out of one of the planter's boxes that I built 2 years ago, and he was like, whoa, this is nice. Like, I can just pull a carrot out, wash it, and just eat it. So for me now as well, it's also teaching my kids where food really comes from. It doesn't just come from the fridge because you open the fridge and it's right there. It doesn't just come from the store because we went to the store and bought it. Well, there's also this, what happened, like how, like the hows of it. Well, what this farmer did to allow us to have the food that we have today. And so for me, it's also, well, educating my children on food, where food really comes from. And in the summertime, this actually allows them to actually help me in the garden, where we can build our own garden, have some time together, do various things outside. As I'm working on my garden outside, they can also be helping me water, pull different fruits and vegetables that we can have for dinner that night and whatnot. So this actually, for me, has become a lot of positive outputs. And at the end of the day, it's things that, like I said, that could benefit us. Now, a lot of this is like, well, is this organic or not? Well, you know what? It's coming out of my own garden. I know what I put in it. So as much as it may not be hitting the organic standards, it's probably better than a lot of the other stuff that we know of with all these other additional chemicals and things that we can't name, right? And so this year, something that I wanted to do was increase capacity. So I'm going to expand my garden again, which a lot of my peers have actually thought of, wow, you either have a really big house or a lot of garden space, because how do you even manage growing all of these things? Well, this is really just making efficient use of the space that I do. And I also made sure that I had or bought a house back then with more green area. Not like a lot, but I just probably have like a little bit more, which I'll show in a future video describing like the size of my growing space. And with that said, yeah, like I'm going to be growing a lot of food this year, where I actually hope that I can actually process and freeze and store for upcoming months, just because I know that my family could definitely utilize food grown from our own garden, and that my children loves it at the end of the day. I grow a lot of tomatoes the last few years for the idea of just having tomato soup. I don't personally like to eat tomatoes, not raw, not any shape or format, but I really don't mind after it's cooked and blended up into a soup essentially. And when the first time that I actually did that, I realized how sweet tomatoes were, simply because tomatoes that we get from the store are actually picked when it's relatively green, perhaps not very well matured, even though it's past the breaker stage and it will ripen and all, but it still doesn't have like this unique sweetness that I'm actually looking for. So I've always thought that tomatoes were sour until I actually made this batch of tomato soup from tomatoes from my garden, and I was like, whoa, tomatoes are so sweet. Like, it was not acidic at all. It was actually a really nice tasting soup, which I think that's how I really started enjoying to have tomato soup, to be very honest. And of course, another thing is that with Calgary weather, we can only grow 4 months at a time, right? So what can I do with the remaining 8 months? I still love to garden. I would still love to be able to pump out food. So of course, I have my tower gardens right behind me. This is in my basement, and it doesn't take up a lot of room. I actually have 3 of them. One is not actually being utilized right now just because I don't need it. And I can actually just come down here and pick food. I don't like to pre-plan what I plan to cook or eat during a week. So what I do is I just come down and I take a look. Well, do I have enough lettuce for a salad tonight? Do I have enough vegetables to make a stir fry? Or even onions that I have dangling right here. Believe it or not, these are actually just ends of onions that I've had cut from store-bought onions, and then I just put the ends, like the green part with a little bit of the root, just into my tower garden. And look, I've got rounds of onions. So it just keeps on coming. So for me, it's just that, well, if I can actually have different fruits and vegetables and whatnot with an arm's reach, this is good for me. So yeah, just a little bit on why I started gardening and how I'm making good use of the outcomes of my garden, and which is why I am also doing this video today, because I would like to share with you all that we live in Calgary, and or perhaps even in zones that are less garden friendly just due to our climate. However, I would like to share with everyone that, well, there are options, and what I'm actually doing in order to combat our climate, and of which in my next video that I will put up, it's actually about seed starting, and I'm going to show you what I'm actually doing right now at the end of February to prepare seeds that I will be sowing and have them grow into seedlings. Then I will be growing or putting out into my raised beds or grow bags, essentially, when summer or late spring comes, and of course as the temperature allows. So thank you so much for joining me today.